You are listening to the People Centric Podcast, where we talk through the toughest challenges that people face at work and give practical advice to fixing those challenges. Thanks for joining our movement to create workplaces that are happier, healthier, aligned, and empowered by putting people at the center of all that we do.
Hey, People Centric leaders, this is Stephanie Anderson, and welcome back to another episode of the People Centric Podcast. Today, we've got, I'm going to call it a spicy topic a little bit. You may hear us getting animated about it because we're going to talk about a phrase we hear people say sometimes that seems to be very triggering for many of us as leaders, and there's quite an internet phenomenon around it. And probably whatever you're thinking right now, that's not what it is. But we're going to talk about the phrase, "That's not my job." That's not my job. And so with me on the podcast today, I have Diana Royalty and Bethany Taff. So if this feels like your job, please jump in and join the podcast.
I don't know if we have like podcast hosts in our job description, Diana. So like,
I think you're right. I know you're right. I have not put that in there. I know.
I don't know if I should probably stay on mute, I guess.
How do I get out of this job? Because I feel so much pressure to make a good podcast for everybody, and it's anxiety ridden. So how do I it's not in my job description. Can I bow out now?
I guess. Bye. See ya.
Well, so dear listener, am I screwed? Right? Like, am I about to just talk about this by myself because it wasn't in either of their job descriptions that they have to be on this podcast and generate content for the company? And that is what we're here to discuss today, because it's not my job, or some version of that is not an uncommon phrase to hear in the workplace, but it seems like lately we're hearing that more and more. And our team, we like what we do and we're curious about it. And so we're following lots of different people online or get different newsletters. And we've seen a theme recently that people who are job coaches or resume coaches are starting to do the move that Bethany just role played for us, of telling people literally, if it is not in your job description, you don't legally have to do it. And so if your boss asks you to do something that's not on there, bring that as receipts and be like, that's not in my role description here. See, boss, you can't make me do that. And right, there is a grain of truth in all of that advice. But for us as people-centric focused people, we're also that presents a huge cultural problem. If I'm hearing people say with clients we work with, either that's not my job or that's not a priority for me, when it's something that is a real priority for the company, or just being unwilling to just do some basic help it out stuff, like they walk past trash on the floor, or they wouldn't take out their own trash if it's full, because that's not my job. That's a huge cultural flag that we see. And so I just want to open up the floor to talk about this today. So first, what are some of the things that you all see symptomatically happening that leaders can be watching for in an organization? If you're starting to feel like people are saying that's not my job, or their actions are starting to dictate that, what might be happening there?
I think when you asked the question initially, I thought of 100 things that could be going on. But I think my biggest few, the top few that kind of surfaced to my mind were, what's the workload actually like? Are the employees actually too busy to do some of these things, right? Because I've been in organizations where the workload is too high. So taking out the trash or doing something like that just adds too much, and they're backed up all the time, right? So I might initially ask about workload and bandwidth and just sort of say, what does it actually look like? And then the other thing that kind of came to mind was, is there a level of camaraderie here? And do people actually like working together in this job? Or are they all sort of upset and not enjoying life, right? And so those were the two things that I really thought about when you brought this up. I was like, okay, if I was asking questions about these, those are probably where I would start. But Bethany, where would you start?
I think I have had the same questions about like what, are people at capacity actually? So small things that are not that big of a deal just seem like a big deal because the actual capacity is too high right now. Because that could be valid. Or like, do people have expectations set for their roles of like, or is there some areas, some processes that are unclear and we don't know what people's roles are within that process. So people, if it's like somebody's not responding to an email because it was like, well, there was 5 people in the email. I don't know, like, am I the person? Is it me or was it supposed to be Diana? I'm not sure who is the person who's supposed to be doing that. So it just feels confusing. So I think those are some of the questions that I had to build off of what you said, Diana. I agree with you.
Yeah, I agree with you both too, because I feel like a lot of times when I'm hearing or seeing people say this, it's like they do genuinely feel busy or overworked in some way, right? Like there's some injustice they feel is happening that leads them to saying this. But maybe here's my spicier question is like, what if that's what the team is saying? Is like, I don't have time to reply to all of these emails or do X, Y, or Z or pick up this extra thing or help clean the office because I'm too busy. But then you as a leader look at their workload and you're like, actually, maybe they're not that busy, or the workload we're at is lower than we might normally be or expect for that role, or this person in particular is actually managing less than the rest of the team. So, like, what if that objection doesn't turn out to be factually true? And then you have someone saying, well, that's not my job and I'm too busy to do that anyway. Like, how might you address that as a leader?
I think that's really where you're getting to, right? Because if it's just that everyone's actually busy, then this statement's not that big of a deal. but
Right.
if, that's what the bulk of this conversation is going to be is like, if you're not crazy overworked and use that phrase, why are you using it? And what do you do as a leader? And I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is, am I making an environment where it's safe to raise concerns as a leader, right? And am I building a team that is actually a team and not a bunch of individuals? So I would ask myself those questions first as the leader, but you guys have a lot more experience with this as the frontline staff. So tell me what you guys see.
I think it matters a lot how, and there's going to be exceptions to this in lots of cultures, but I think it matters a lot how the leader is modeling in these cultures in these organizations too. So, I think you have a better shot at overcoming this if you have a leader who is saying like, "Hey, everybody, like let's do this thing together," or "Hey, I'm gonna like step into areas that it's like maybe even as the top level leader, it doesn't make sense." I think you have to be willing to, again, as a leader, like protect your time, right? Like you have to know that like you can't get into the weeds of everything as a leader, but also are you willing to say like, I may be the CEO or I may be a manager or I may be a director or whatever, but like I'm gonna wash my dishes whenever I'm done with them, or I am going to answer this person's question, or I am going to, whatever it may be. Are your people seeing you do those things too? Because I think that does set the tone for the rest of the team as well to be willing to be like, yeah, this is not a big deal. This is just how we do things here. That's what
Yeah, I would agree. And like, does your team even know there really is a problem, right? Like, I think sometimes I'll talk to leaders and the main leader or a higher level leader is so frustrated because they're like, there's all these pieces of work that are not getting done. And then I'm hearing feedback maybe from other stakeholders or things like that. And then I'm going to my team saying, like, why didn't we fix this? And they're saying, well, either that's not my job or that's not my greatest priority right now, or like so and so should have done that, not me. And I think those are sometimes moments where I'm like, well, Yeah, evaluate, like, is the team actually too busy? But also, like, does your team really understand the problem that you're trying to solve right now? Because to me, that sounds like a team that may be really busy, but might not be focused on the right things. And so they could be doing a lot in their job, but if it's not helping solve the core problem that needs fixed, and it's just like this recurring monster that keeps coming back to eat our lunch every day, then we might need to tell the team, like, hey, team, we have a problem. This is the problem. Clearly state it, frame the conversation, and tell your team for the next 2 weeks, 1 month, right? However long you think it will take, this is going to be the priority. So I actually want you to pause working on these other things. So like have looked at what else they're working on. What reasonably could you pause and get refocused and say, this has to be the thing we fix first, because this keeps coming back around to bite us in the butt. And here's who's going to solve it. Because I think that's the other thing that often I will say when I hear people saying that's not my job. My follow-up question often as a coach is like, oh, okay, well then whose job is it? And then sometimes people can't answer that question. Like they know, they're like, well, I'm pretty sure it's not mine, but I also don't know whose it is. So if you frame the problem for the team, also make it clear who is going to be working on this to solve it. And you may need to launch like a specific like project team, step team to say, Stephanie, Bethany, and Philip and Diana are going to pull together a special project team for the next 30 days to solve this. And when they reach out to you for questions, I need you to respond. I need you to engage. I need you to send them documents. They're going to be the ones defining a new, process for us here. And then share the results of that with the team and then say, like, this is how we solved it. This is what the solution is going to be going forward. And this is how I all expect you to respond to this, like from this moment on. So to kind of like recap what I just said, I think a lot of times leaders haven't actually defined the problem for their teams. So the teams aren't focused on solving the right things. They've not defined like really who is responsible for solving the problem. How are we going to solve it? And then doing an expectations reset at some point in that to say, no, like this is all of our jobs, or this is your job specifically. And I get it. It might not be something that was originally in their job description. And if it's a distinct enough task that you want to update the job description, you can do that. Like job descriptions aren't like, carved in stone. Those are digital documents. You can update them and should be updating them as you go along. So that'd be my other tip too, is like, don't feel like you are a victim to a job description that maybe got written years ago. You can update it, you can change it and bring that back to this person and say, actually, like we are going to go ahead and make that distinct if it really is a big enough thing, if it really is something you expect them to do on a regular basis, and just make it really clear what you do expect of them performance wise, what you do expect, like what responsibilities they're going to handle within the company.
Yeah, I think I want to back up a little bit because I think we're talking about different scenarios, right? There are certain scenarios, like Stephanie, what you were just saying of like, this thing has been added to my job and it's now a recurring theme. And I need to just take that as part of my new responsibilities and I need to get it changed to my job description. And then there's also the things like taking out the trash or doing the dishes or building a piece of furniture one time, right? Like I think there's a difference in those things, or the one-time project things, right? And so I think maybe we should talk through some of the different scenarios and some of those things, right? So yeah, I don't know. I just felt like there's a lot of different ways this phrase is being used, that it's not my job, in a lot of different scenarios. And I think each little one is a little different.
Oh, you're totally right. You're totally right.
Yeah. And I think part of our conversation before had been kind of like, there's a difference sometimes between being like, I'm not the I'm probably not the right person for this, or like, and this is just not my job. Because there are moments, right, where we could say like, I don't know if I am the right person to do that on the team, but that doesn't mean I'm not willing to do it. And I think there's a big difference between those two things. So yeah, to your point, Diana, there was, I think, some examples to think about, like, how do you narrow down if this is something that you should be stepping back and pausing and saying, like, should I be doing this, or is this something that nobody needs to do, or it belongs to somebody else, or yeah, how we should manage that. So
Yeah. And I'll fully admit, like, so the ones where it's like, hey, there's work that needs to be accomplished and somebody says it's not my job. I would say personally for me as a leader, I feel much more confident working in that. We're going to walk through like a similar process to like what I just described. Like that's how I would approach it. We're going to look at job descriptions. We're going to do X, Y, and Z. The one that I struggle with is, yeah, when you see somebody like, me and my example always is like, yeah, walks past trash on the floor or walks past a dirty dish or just leaves a dirty dish there. And it's just some of like the general, like doing life together in work, that it's like, those are the ones that really bother me, if I'm going to be honest, that like just my Stephanie brain wants to look at them and be like, who raised you? You didn't wash your own cup and you expect somebody else to do your dishes, or like you really just walked past trash on the floor, or your trash is just overflowing and you're just like waiting for some magic, house cleaning fairy to come and do this. Like, so I'm curious to hear both of your perspectives, because that's the one I tend to struggle with more, when it's not like a specific task or tactic, strategy, job responsibility related piece. And I think other leaders struggle with that one too.
Yeah, I shared a example when we first were talking about this, of when we were very early starting off on People Centric, and we were moving offices, and I was building a chair, like a desk chair, right, for somebody. It might have been my own chair, I don't know. But I asked someone else, like, hey, could you build your chair? Like, there's 20 chairs that I have to build. Can you build a chair? And this person said to me, that's not in my job description. And flat out just like wouldn't do it. And in that moment, in that time, I was really mad about it. I was like, listen, we are a startup. This is a new office. You're a new employee. We like, what? You don't want to do that? Like, I helped found the company, and I'm sitting on the floor building a chair. And our CEO had done the same thing. Like, he had built 3 or 4 chairs. Like, this was not, we were basically upgrading from the garage we were in, right? We were not like, we couldn't pay people to do this. This was it. And there was 4 of us at the time. It was a really small team. We're still a really small team. There was 4 of us. So when they said that, I was like, you don't fit our culture. And I don't appreciate that comment. And if I asked you to go clean the toilet, I expect you would go clean the toilet. None of those were expectations. None of those were set. None of those were standards that were set aloud. But I felt like we were creating an environment where people just pitched in and did the things that needed to be done and did them, right? And as I've thought about it later, it still is upsetting to me that they said that. But I probably, in that moment, should have asked more questions about what was going through their head. Like, okay, why do you think this isn't your job? It's not specifically listed in your job description as build the chair, but part of our core values, our team, and, we pitch in and do things that would need to be done. So like, what part of not your job is this, right? I should have maybe asked that question. And so I don't know. I think there's, man, I've lost the thread. I lost the thread of like what your question was and where we were going. But I think that my thought there is that no, not every job is going to be listed on a job description.
Right.
But is it listed in your core values? Is it listed in your mission and vision? Is it listed in your personal values and how you want to interact with other human beings and how you want to be portrayed? Is it listed in maybe your effectiveness and your influence and how you want to carry that through. So like, how is it affecting your goals and the goals of the team? And like, is it maybe some of that stuff? I don't know. I think there's so many things that could go into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think I'm glad you said kind of like the mission, vision, and values, because we always talk about that. And I think that's an area that people undervalue in these kinds of situations, to be able to point back to and help us remember that is something that like we agreed to when we decided to come work for this organization. So if they don't reflect the culture that you actually want to build as a leader, then like maybe you should reevaluate your mission, vision, values, revisit those a little bit. But I think that that's a great area to point back to and say like, hey, this is just like, this is who we are. This is the culture that we're trying to build here. And to be able to invite people in. I mean, I think that what you did in that situation, Diana, was like you literally invited them to come and help jump in and do something. They declined, but I think that there are some situations where people, maybe leaders, get frustrated with an employee for not jumping in and doing something, but they haven't like really invited them and they're just mad that they're not jumping in to do it. So I think that's another thing to be aware of as a leader too, to be able to say like, hey, if you see somebody not doing something, like take a minute and just invite them and gently try not to be frustrated about it first, and sort of just say like, how do they respond to it? To say, hey, if the whole team is trying to work on something in the office that is not directly related to your job, but it's impacting all of us, then, hey, we could really use your help over here. Like, we're all trying to do this thing. Do you mind just stepping aside for a minute and helping us with whatever it may be? And just, I think sometimes people don't even mean it. They're not even thinking about it. They're stuck in the middle of their work and they're not even recognizing that the rest of the team is doing this thing. So like, take that step first. And then I think it's being able to say, okay, and if they're not responding well to it, I love the questions that you said, that you asked, Diana. And then if it's like a continual like challenge, doing those gut checks that we've talked about earlier of like, what's the capacity? What's the situation that's really going on? And if it really comes down to like, I just don't think we're aligned, like, let's point back to those mission, vision, values and say, like, is this like, are we on the same page? And making sure that that you're having that discussion as kind of a final, so kind of a final piece of it,
Yeah.
to hopefully get in the right direction.
Yeah. And the other thing I think I would remind today, like if that happened today, right? I'm hoping that my hot head would not take over the way that it did back then. But I'm hoping that today I would also remind the person, like, your job description says key responsibilities. It doesn't say all responsibilities, right? It's listed as like what you're generally going to do every day. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that I, as a leader, have thought through every single thing that you might possibly be asked to do and put that on your job description. And also, most job descriptions say something like, and other duties as assigned. So I think it's an odd reaction for people to start pointing back to these job descriptions and saying, like, it's not in my job description. It's not in my job description. I think that limits everybody's ability to do really good work together if you're constantly trying to game the system and say like, well, it's not on my key responsibilities, so I just don't have to do it. I think that breeds an environment where nobody is collaborating and nobody's helping each other, because I don't think I've seen a job description that says like empty the sink if it's full of dishes, right? This is just part of like being a part of a team and being good stewards of the environment you're in. I don't know. So
Mhm. Yeah. And I liked how you both framed that as alignment, right? Like if you're feeling that way, if as an employee or a leader, to your point, that's probably your sign that you're not aligned. And so instead of going to give them some big speech about how you want them to treat their job like they're an entrepreneur, or like getting into weird like almost like union speak with an employee when maybe a union doesn't exist because you're a family-owned company and there's 10 of you, right? I like that you framed all that as alignment of just saying like, yeah, like let's look at our values and which of our values would tell us that like honestly we just pitch in to help each other or we would just do something that's just helpful to the team or helpful to other people and are going to have some ownership in the work that we do here. So I like that you frame that way. Because again, I think a lot of times leaders get frustrated and they'll either react out of that frustration or they give these speeches that almost feels like they're union busting. And like, that's not going to help it. But I think if you can remind people of the values, the mission, and then also just acknowledge like sometimes you may just have someone that there's misalignment and it's just not the right fit. And maybe this isn't the right company for them to be working at. So I think that was a good framing that you both did.
I think one thing that we talked about a little bit as we were prepping for this topic too is like, you might be an employee who's feeling this and feeling like I feel like things keep getting added to my plate and I'm not sure if it's all super appropriate and I feel like I need to set a boundary, but does that mean that like I'm not a team player? And so I would say like if at all possible, my advice on that would be not to just decide like you're just not going to do it or to just say like that's not my job, but to maybe like proactively go to your boss and have a conversation and say, hey, I do have concerns about this. I don't want to be somebody who's not a team player. I don't want to be viewed as, viewed in this way. But I would like to have a real conversation about some of these items. Is this where my time is best spent within this role? And if we really believe that is, then like, let's talk about it. And it's an opportunity for you to, as an individual, to be able to figure out like if you are aligned with that role too, if that's what the role is and that's how it's set up, it gives you that opportunity to just sort of gut check that for yourself. But I think it's totally appropriate to go have those questions. I just think your approach, you need to be wise about your approach on that because I think so many people are just like, no, I'm setting a boundary and I'm just not going to do it. And if they ask me about it, then I'll just tell them that it's not my job and it's not in my job description, which I think in general is probably not the best way to handle it. So
yeah. I think I've seen some people approach that conversation and it's almost like, yeah, they're going into the conversation prepared to be going up against like the big bad corporate boss, like who's just this evil person that sits in the high tower and is just like maniacally trying to figure out how many tasks they can put on every employee. And we just know that's not true. Like, it's just not true. And so that would be, to add on to what you said, Bethany, my thought, if you're going to go have this conversation with your leader, which I think you should, I think you have to be willing to go into it with a little bit of grace for that person that they probably didn't realize that maybe they were putting too much on your plate. They probably didn't realize that maybe work was being divided unfairly. They probably didn't realize that maybe you were getting overwhelmed by the volume of work. And I think if you're willing to go in with that kind of thought in your mind, and again, you can still come prepared. You can still come prepared and say, these are the things that have been added that feel like too much. And here's how long I've been taking on those things. Or here's where maybe I've seen the workload get distributed unfairly. But you have to be willing, I think, to have a little grace because again, if you go in and it's all demands, you're probably not going to get the response that you want, right? But if you're willing to go in a little vulnerable, a little humble, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they don't realize that this is what's happening. And then again, you have a choice in this matter too as the employee. Like if really, really they're putting too much on your plate, you're not allowed to have boundaries for your work. It really, really is too much. And you go have this conversation and your boss just says, buck up, buttercup, right? You do have a choice. You don't have to keep doing those things. But I think the choice then there is, well, that probably means you're not in the right role or at the right company. Not, I'm going to just plant my flag here and stake out and see who wins. And I'm just going to refuse to do things. Like, how does that help you be successful at work or toward the goals that you want to accomplish if you are just unwilling to do things at work. I'm going to say like it does not help you at all. So I think you have the choice then. You either need to decide, how can I work within this? And how can I have more productive conversations? Or honestly, am I just misaligned with the leadership or the company, and maybe this isn't the right fit for me? So, well, I think this has been a really interesting conversation. I've appreciated both of your perspective, because I think it's one, like I said at the beginning, that tends to just get people up in arms pretty quickly and feels like we have to take sides on it. We either have to be pro company or pro employee. And I really do believe, I mean, true to our people centric model, is that the solution is in the middle, and that there's lots of things that we could do that would be beneficial, yes, to the company to help accomplish goals, because that's why we're here, but also to take into consideration the needs of people, and that we all have different capacities. We all have different strengths and talents and things we prefer to work on. So I hope this has given you, either as a leader or an employee, something to think about today. But any final thoughts from our team before we wrap?
Thanks for doing this. I do think it's a hot topic right now.
Yeah. Great. All right. Well, if you found this topic helpful, we'd love it if you'd let us know. Or if we did not touch something that you're struggling with on this issue, send us a message. We'd be happy to walk you through that. And as always, I know we give this pitch all the time, and so don't fast forward just yet. Don't end. But if you have an idea or something you'd love for us to talk about, we would love to hear it from you. So please listen to the outro for how to get a hold of us. Send us a topic. Let's stump the consultant. Send us something challenging, and we will discuss it as a team. So again, thanks for listening. We hope the rest of your day is great.
Thank you for listening to the People Centric Podcast. We are so grateful for you joining us every week. If you like this content, please like and subscribe. Also, feel free to share on your social media with everyone that you know. It really does help us. If you would like to contact us, I have put our information in the show notes. Please reach out anytime. We love hearing from you. We will be back next week with a new topic. Until then, be well and lead